Hi, this is Chris German from the Apartment Dealer, and today I'm bringing you some bad news. Effective Thursday, the state of California, the state legislature, the Senate of California has passed rent control for the entire state.
This just in, the California Senate has voted to approve a bill that would cap rent increases for most tenants across the state. Under the measure, annual rent increases would be capped at 5% plus inflation for housing built more than 15 years ago.
Now, many owners are unaware that this legislation was even being proposed, let alone had the ability to pass without a vote from the citizenry, given the fact that here in last October, Proposition 10, which was statewide rent control, was defeated by the citizens, and yet our politicians found it fitting to pass this bill on their own accord. What does that mean? Yes, in your city, if you own any investment property within the state of California, you are now under rent control pending the governor's signature, but he vows to sign this bill into law. We imagine that's going to happen within the next day or two. Rent control, many of you are unfamiliar with rent control because you own in cities that has never had rent control, and you may have heard about rent control in LA City, but again, never had firsthand experience. Probably the three most alarming aspects of the bill is number one, it limits how much you can raise your rents annually. So as opposed to you determining per tenant what amount you will raise the rent, it sets a maximum. The maximum is 5% of the current rent plus the cost of living. Cost of living can vary year to year, so it's 5% plus the cost of living. Second, if you raised your rent since March 15th of this year, and that increase was more than the proposed rent cap, they call it, the rent cap of the 5% plus cost of living, you must roll your rent back to what it was on March 15th of this year, effective the 1st of January 2020. Third, and very alarming, is what they call just cause evictions. Again, since you own in a non-rent control area, should you have a troublesome tenant choose to take back a unit because you want to do capital improvements, prior to the law, you would have just given that tenant a 60-day notice. Effective with the law, you must now have just cause. To elaborate a little bit more on just cause, I'm going to take you to a clip from a recent interview we did with Steven Spear, real estate attorney for over 4 decades. He litigates real estate law. He's not one of the run-of-the-mill eviction attorneys. He represents both landlords and realtors in the courtrooms, in jury trials when it comes to real estate law. And he spoke more in depth on what is just cause, what determines just cause. Let's look at that now. But let's talk just cause eviction, because again, much of our audience is used to, if you have a troublesome tenant, a break in the lease, they just issue a 60-day notice and they can be gone. Not so, you must have just cause. What is a just cause?
So just cause is in the eye of the beholder for the judge. The judge is going to get to decide what just cause is. Just cause is always going to be failure to pay rent. There's not going to be a circumstance where you can just not pay the rent and stay in the apartment provided that the premises are habitable. But what just cause is going to be is difficult for a landlord to say, gee, I just don't like you. Well, that's going to raise all kinds of questions as to why you don't like me. And so that's going to be a problem. So I think that the just cause issue and a lack of vacancy decontrol and rent control, those are probably two of the bigger threats. But again, the market will operate. And so if you have a tenant who is there and you can articulate reasons specifically why they're detrimental to the apartment complex. So for example, they're disturbing other tenants, or they make too much noise, or they leave their trash in the parking lot, or their car is inoperative and it's in the parking lot, something like that, that's going to be easy. If it's a single family residence and if those come under rent control, and they might, then it's going to be hard to make any kind of neighbor issues because those won't be the landlord's problem. and the landlord won't have standing to make the argument. But just cause is going to be anything you can articulate as to why that tenant is detrimental to the property.
I hope that sheds some light on what just cause means. It almost is in the eye of the beholder, beyond the point of if a tenant does not pay rent, but there are other issues. Now, there's other facets to this bill, and there's actually some loopholes where you can actually get around the rent cap, if you will. But to dissect this bill, to give it its proper place, we're actually coordinating an educational event coming up in October 3rd, where I'm bringing together some of the brightest minds in the field of not just in real estate, but with respect to multifamily real estate, to discuss this issue at length. How do you navigate this law without breaking the law? But more importantly, how do you still continue to thrive and maximize your profits as a landlord? Bottom line is, I would assume you purchased rental units for cash flow. You didn't purchase the units so that you could take calls in the middle of the night for leaky faucets and broken toilets. It's about cash flow. So we're going to discuss at length, when you have another government entity telling you how much you can charge for rent, how do you still navigate that and still thrive and still increase your rate of return significantly? At this event, aside of the rent control issue, we're going to be discussing the other issues that have changed when it comes to real estate law, changes within the tax code when it comes to owning investment real estate, and really the apartment market at large, because even prior to this bill, the market itself was going through a shift. What effect on values will this rent control bill now have? Obviously, we're in the beginning hours of it coming into law, but I can't fathom a situation where now we have rent control, so all of a sudden values skyrocket because we have rent control, because we have limits on rents. So we're going to dive into this to address market trends and whether values have been trending upwards, downwards. What potential effect could this have on the marketplace? One of the speakers we'll have with us is Bruce Norris. Bruce Norris has properly diagnosed, if you will, markets for the last 3 decades. Whether a market was about to tilt up or if it was going to tilt down, Bruce has become well known throughout the country, but specifically to California real estate, to accurately pinpoint inflection points within the marketplace. And he'll be one of our speakers at our event, as well as Steven Spear, the real estate lawyer that you saw. All the gentlemen that I've invited to come to this event have decades of experience, not only being a pinnacle within their individual fields, but being landlords themselves. So they're not going to give you just the textbook answer. They're coming from this from a practical standpoint of, if I own multifamily and now I have rent control and all the other limitations of ownership, what does that mean? How do I still thrive? So October 3rd, I invite you, I implore you to be in attendance. This is purely an educational event, and it's just that, educational. There will not be one sales pitch from myself or from any of the speakers who I've invited. We're there just to share information, to empower you, the landlords, to educate those that are in attendance. I've been coordinating this event now for the past 10 years. Probably in total, we've had maybe close to 15, 16 events. Probably nearly 2,000 apartment owners have come through our events. And every event we have, prior attendees fight, if you will, for seats and want to reserve their seat early because they know how much value they have received from previous events. Case in point, we're still about 3 weeks away from the event. Over 50% of the seats are already spoken before. And this is before anyone even knew that rent control was in fact going to become a law. So it's my offer to you. My intent here is to inform you, the owner, that rent control is real. Rent control is an issue to you as a landlord of investment real estate. and I hope you'll take me up on my offer. Again, the event is Thursday, October 3rd in the city of San Gabriel. Seating is by reservation only, and seating is reserved for owners of multifamily properties only. So no outside vendors, no real estate agents. Don't try to register. This is only for the landlords. We don't want anyone in the audience who's going to be peddling their services, haggling the owners while they're there trying to learn. This is an educational setting. We do serve lunch throughout the course of the afternoon. We don't stop for lunch because there's too much content to cover, but we do serve lunch. And one of the most powerful points of the afternoon is we do host a Q&A session with the speakers. So any questions you've been storing up that you would want to pose to a real estate attorney, real estate tax consultant, a market forecaster, but necessarily didn't want to pay $300, $400, $500 an hour to sit down for a consultation, you can bring those questions. We rapid fire through as many of them as we can, and we give you the full answer. We don't give you half an answer and then say, okay, book a meeting with me for a fee and you get the rest of the answer. We have no books, no tapes to sell you at the back of the room. And we're not here to push anything on you. Again, it's all free educational content. I hope you'll join us. I hope you'll call and reserve your seat. This is Chris German from The Apartment Dealer. And as always, I'm wishing you positive cash flow, tenants who behave, and now more than ever, much protection from the government. Uncle Sam, rent control. Thank you.